Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. Welcome to my channel. This is my very first video, and I look forward to making many more videos focusing on DIY and other craft projects. So let's get started with the first one. As I was scrolling through Pinterest, I came across this ceramic tile wall hanging. I really like this style. I felt that it had a little bit of a boho mid-century feel to it that I thought would go great with our apartment. This specific tile was originally from the Urban Outfitters website. Unfortunately, it was sold out, so I figured this would be a great opportunity for me to make something myself. To start with, you'll want a paper, ruler, and pencil so you can draw the designs. Next, you'll need some clay. I used the original Sculpey oven baked clay that I had from a previous project. And I probably got this at Michael's, but I'm sure you could get this at any craft store or even online. You'll need some leather or faux leather cording that'll help you hang the tile. I bought two different kinds that had slightly different widths, just wanted to see how they look. Here are some tools that you'll need, which you can easily get in a cheap pack at a craft store or online. I used this tube to roll out the clay. It was a bit small, but it definitely worked. These carving tools are great because they all have different tips and you can play around to see which one works best. And lastly, you'll need some acrylic paints and small paintbrushes. Using the ruler, I started by drawing 5" by 5" squares. They don't need to be exact, but they'll give you an idea of how big the design should be. I planned on only making 3 tiles, but I drew out a lot of squares since I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do yet. I got my inspiration from Society 6, specifically the artist Thing Design. We recently bought 2 of their prints for our bedroom, so I wanted to complement that design. So first I drew monstera and a few other types of plants. I also wanted to incorporate a female figure like the original tile, so I found a few poses for inspiration on Pinterest. Once I had a handful of designs to choose from, I shuffled them around to see which looked best. Next, I wanted to create a stencil that I could easily trace onto the clay, so I just used a Sharpie and traced the designs onto wax paper. Next, I put down some wax paper on the tabletop just to protect it, and I brought out the clay. You'll really need to work the clay with your hands to get it soft enough to roll out into a slab. So it'll probably be easier to break it into smaller pieces first and then combine later. Once you've combined the soft clay together, you can roll it out into the slab. I'm not sure there's any real trick to this. You just gotta play with it. To make sure the slab is large enough, you can slip your design beneath the wax paper. Once it's the right size, you can use the tools to cut off any extra clay. I also ran my fingers along the edges of the slab to soften up the look. That's one thing that I really like about this piece is that it isn't a perfect square. It has a handmade quality to it that makes it really beautiful. I rolled out my slabs to about 1/4 inch thick. This will make it easy for baking times since it's measured by thickness. Now that the slab is ready, we can use the wax paper stencil to trace the designs onto the clay. Since the wax paper is transparent, you can position the design how you want it, just remembering to leave some space at the top for the holes. I traced the design with one of the tools that I had, but I'd recommend doing it softly, as you can always make it deeper later. At this point, you just want to make a light impression, and if you press too hard, it'll rip through the wax paper. Once you've traced the whole design, you can remove the wax paper and retrace the design in the clay. You want it deep enough to be noticeable, but not so deep that it's poking through the back. Depending on the tool that you use, you may need to smooth out the area around the lines and clean up any clay crumbs. To make the holes for the cording, I used a toothpick. I casually used the toothpick to measure the distance from both sides of the corner so that they're about the same distance in. You could use a ruler if you wanted to be more exact. Then I put the slabs on foil on a baking tray, and then they're ready to go. Per the instructions, I baked my slab at 275 for 15 minutes. And once they're done, you just have to wait until they're cool and hardened. These were the paint colors that I chose to stay within that mid-century boho style. I started by painting the plant green, making sure that the paint got into the carved lines but didn't get too gloopy. I wanted to paint past the lines with a generous margin, and I wasn't too concerned about it being sloppy since I'll be tidying it up later. And after that, I painted the cool blobby shapes. Finally, I painted the background color, which was a creamy white. This was when I paid more attention to the lines and the edges of the design. Again, I'm not too concerned with it being perfect since part of the design was to look handmade. So now I have my painted tiles ready to attach the cording, and I'm pretty pleased with how they turned out. I realized that I made the holes just a little too small for the cording that I chose, so I had to use a needle and thread to guide it through. If you have to do this, just be careful that you don't pull too hard. Even though the tiles have hardened, they're not indestructible. Then you tie the knot at one end and do the same for the other hole. If you're doing multiple tiles, I would recommend cutting 3 cords at the same length first so that they hang the same way. And there you have your ceramic tile wall hanging. And there you go. I now have beautiful artwork for my bathroom. I'm really happy with how it turned out. So thanks for watching. And if you're looking for some more DIY content, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.